In today's episode, we'll be reading A Cypherpunk's Manifesto by Hughes. Cypherpunk is a portmanteau of cipher and cyberpunk, and they were a group dedicated to cryptography. But what's immediately clear from the title is that the group was an anarchy. It's not the manifesto, but a manifesto. And with that simple choice, the manifesto already separates itself from others which claim to speak for all or represent the views of the whole group. Anarchy in this sense just means the lack of hierarchy. So Hughes isn't the leader or the representative of the cypherpunks. He has simply formulated some of their core ideals. These ideals were eagerly discussed and ruthlessly challenged in the mailing list that was the Cypherpunk HQ online in 1990s. In this episode, we'll look at this highly influential text and see how its visionary ideals paved the way for some of today's blockchain projects. Enjoy! Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. Privacy was of course necessary even before the internet, but the need for it just explodes when you go online. As our digital activity leaves traces everywhere, all online interactions could now potentially be recorded. Privacy is not secrecy. A private matter is something one doesn't want the whole world to know, but a secret matter is something one doesn't want anybody to know. So, what a great distinction. And right off the bat, this takes aim at the common argument that you don't need privacy as long as you don't have anything to hide. Privacy isn't about keeping things hush-hush just because you're running a meth lab. Privacy is the power to selectively reveal oneself to the world. This sets the record straight. The default state is not that all information is accessible by default. That if only you weren't keeping secrets, they would be known to everybody. That's not true. So privacy is keeping secrets is a false equivalence. Instead, it makes it clear that information ought to be shared only on a voluntary basis. That's why revealing information is the action, not the hiding of it. This is important not only because it's the social reality, but also because in arguments, the default position always has a leg up on the position that requires action. It's also a fantastic definition because it puts control squarely with the individual, instead of it being up to some kind of passive barrier that's set up to keep others out. In short, this definition highlights the positive case for privacy, basing it on the wants of a person over the negative case of privacy, that is, limiting what others can do with it. If two parties have some sort of dealings, then each has a memory of their interaction. Each party can speak about their own memory of this. How could anyone prevent it? One could pass laws against it, but the freedom of speech, even more than privacy, is fundamental to an open society. We seek not to restrict any speech at all. This point is made to underline that yes, this isn't just about privacy. This is about unfettered freedom of speech and activity, with all the negative consequences that this entails. So without making it explicit here, this is taking a stance on the question, what should the limits to free speech be? The cypherpunk answer is none. On their mailing list, for example, they ridicule legislation that protects people from cyberstalking because they think it's a violation of free speech. They would claim that since no physical harm had occurred, the restriction was not warranted. Racists and fascists are also singled out as potential users of strong encryption. But the counter-argument is that encryption didn't make them racist or fascist. And by analogy, even though locked doors also aid lots of undesirable behavior, yet open door policies aren't enforced or common. As a further counter-argument, they claim that most racist and fascist situations are made far worse by state sponsorship. Think about apartheid laws, American slavery, and Nazi Germany. These are all examples of the state enforcing racist and genocidal laws. The cypherpunks believed in crypto's ability to undermine central authority like that, and this more than makes up for some racist or fascist groups getting access to unbreakable crypto. Finally, with privacy as the primary goal, the idea was also that it would be much easier to keep your identity anonymous. So someone's physical attributes, such as their race, would be impossible to discern and thus much less of an issue. If many parties speak together in the same forum, each can speak to all of the others and aggregate together knowledge about individuals and other parties. The power of electronic communication has enabled such group speech,
and it will not go away merely because we might want it to.
Ah, yes. As we've seen time and time again, what goes on the internet stays on the internet. That's what the "it will not go away merely because we want it to" refers to. So remember that this was written at a time when most people hadn't heard about the internet yet. So it's saying that while in the physical world our traces might be ephemeral, our digital traces are a lot more tenacious. This might lead some people to call for the limits on what can be done with information that's found online. But the manifesto shivers at the overreach of such a law and instead proposes privacy as a much more elegant solution.
Since we desire privacy, we must ensure that each party to a transaction have knowledge only of that which is directly necessary for that transaction.
Yeah, this concept of minimal exposure has found its way into concept like privacy by default, which is one of the key principles in the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. So it's been really influential in shaping legislation like that.
Since any information can be spoken of, we must ensure that we reveal as little as possible.
Such a great principle, but so far removed from how most users behave on the internet today, where there is little awareness of the data they reveal while online.
In most cases, personal identity is not salient. When I purchase a magazine at a store and hand cash to the clerk, there is no need to know who I am. My provider need not know to whom I am speaking, or what I am saying, or what others are saying to me. My provider only need know how to get the message there and how much I owe them in fees.
The erosion of online anonymity has come gradually over the past 2 decades. The use of pseudonyms used to be the norm in the early days, when you could hide behind your username. But with the rise of social networks using an ad-targeted business model, anonymity and even pseudonymity completely went out of the window. Companies like Google, Blizzard, and Facebook all have required real names, leading to all sorts of problems.
When my identity is revealed by the underlying mechanism of the transaction, I have no privacy. I cannot here selectively reveal myself. I must always reveal myself.
The infringement of privacy is portrayed as a design choice. So when developing technologies, there's a choice whether to require users to reveal themselves or not. And that choice, the cypherpunks say, should remain with the user always.
Therefore, privacy in an open society requires an anonymous transaction system. Until now, cash has been the primary such system.
It's not a coincidence that till this day, cash is king in Germany. Nazi Germany and the later German Democratic Republic are two of the most harrowing examples of what mass state surveillance can lead to. So Germans are often reluctant to use digital means of payment because of the digital records that they create. Cash has none of these downsides, but of course can't be used online.
An anonymous transaction system is not a secret transaction system. An anonymous system empowers individuals to reveal their identity when desired and only when desired. This is the essence of privacy. Privacy in an open society also requires cryptography. If I say something, I want it to be heard only by those for whom I intend it. If the content of my speech is available to the world, I have no privacy.
An open society is one that is free from coercion. Notice the implicit argument here. Openness doesn't mean that all can see all, but rather that all individuals have the liberty to deal and discuss with whomever they want, without fear of repercussions. That is the sense of openness that's being used here.
To encrypt is to indicate the desire for privacy, and to encrypt with weak cryptography is to indicate not too much desire for privacy.
So, responsibility lies with the individual. And this is really interesting from a political philosophy perspective, because to achieve privacy, cypherpunks aren't advocating for laws to stop others from looking into your data like the EU does with their GDPR. Instead, it's making privacy a personal choice, which can simply be achieved by strengthening the encryption you're using. This solution requires no laws and no state enforcement. They believe that math and code are the more direct way of achieving and enforcing these rights.
Furthermore, to reveal one's identity with assurance, when the default is anonymity, requires the cryptographic signature.
The point here is that in order to build trust, That is, in order to have a reasonable belief that you are dealing with the individual or entity that you're expecting to be dealing with, you need a cryptographic signature. So anonymity and trust do not have to be at odds with each other. The cypherpunks solved this with cryptography and software in a way that simply wasn't possible before the advent of the internet.
We cannot expect governments, corporations, or other large, faceless organizations to grant us privacy out of their beneficence.
Governments and corporations here are lumped together. But as the cypherpunks' predictions of the corporate abuse of personal data has largely come true, most governments have stepped in with their own privacy legislation. The EU has come up with the GDPR, and even China is coming up with the Personal Information Protection Law. Though these legislations fall short because they create legal mechanisms instead of ensuring a technical certainty. The responsibility now lies with the corporates to do the right thing, but it would have been much better to mandate technology so that it would have been impossible for the corporates to make those mistakes in the first place. Because, as the many data leaks will attest, individuals' privacy is still sacrificed as soon as corporates decide to ignore the law.
It is to their advantage to speak of us, and we should expect that they will speak. To try to prevent their speech is to fight against the realities of information. Information does not just want to be free, it longs to be free.
This is such an important passage because it presents the tension that we still live with today. Companies will want our data, and we should engage with them to negotiate the right price of our data. So when you think about it, this foreshadows what would become the internet's most popular business model. Users provide their personal data through clicks, messages, and metadata in return to access services which are provided without a financial cost to the user. Of course, this picture misses the vital part where users are also paying with their attention, which is what the services in turn sell on to the ad networks.
Information expands to fill the available storage space. Information is rumor's younger, stronger cousin. Information is fleeter on foot, has more eyes, knows more, and understands less than rumor.
So if you ever needed another reason to close your Facebook account, that's it, right? The parallel between information and rumor here is made to stress that once information is out of an individual's control, they no longer have a say in how it's going to be used. So retaining their information is the only means of exercising control over how it is used online. It's kind of a bleak message, but it's one for the ages. If you don't want your information to be used, don't reveal it.
We must defend our own privacy if we expect to have any. We must come together and create systems which allow anonymous transactions to take place. People have been defending their privacy for centuries, with whispers, darkness, envelopes, closed doors, secret handshakes, and couriers. The technologies of the past did not allow for strong privacy, but electronic technologies do. We, the cypherpunks, are dedicated to building anonymous systems. We are defending our privacy with cryptography, with anonymous mail forwarding systems, with digital signatures, and with electronic money.
So this is the crux of the Cypherpunk program, outlining both their rationale and their call to action. We must defend our own privacy if we expect to have any by creating systems which allow anonymous transactions to take place. The specific systems called out here are anonymous communications, online identity verification, and digital currency. The first two systems were rapidly developed, but it took more than 2 decades for the dream of digital currency to really take off.
Cypherpunks write code. We know that someone has to write software to defend privacy, and since we can't get privacy unless we all do, we're going to write it.
There's no point in just discussing these ideas. They have to be implemented for them to become a reality. So that's why the manifesto calls for fellow cypherpunks to join the development effort and build this reality together.
We publish our code so that our fellow cypherpunks may practice and play with it. Our code is free for all to use worldwide. We don't much care if you don't approve of the software we write. We know that software can't be destroyed and that a widely dispersed system can't be shut down.
Cypherpunks consider code as a form of speech, so free speech provisions also apply to code. They believe that code constructs social reality, so in order to achieve their desired reality, their code had to be spread far and wide. They released their code openly to the public so that the ideas embedded within the code would be available to anyone around the globe. The code spread as freely as speech and as fast as hot gossip. You could say that their commitment to the open source ethos helped their ideas go viral.
Cypherpunks deplore regulations on cryptography, for encryption is fundamentally a private act. The act of encryption, in fact, removes information from the public realm. Even laws against cryptography reach only so far as a nation's border and the arm of its violence. Cryptography will ineluctably spread over the whole globe, and with it, the anonymous transaction systems that it makes possible.
Given that the movement is bent on superseding traditional forms of government, they oppose the establishment's measure to impede the formation of a digital and open society. But at the same time, they're also completely being dismissive of the establishment's ability to stop their inevitable replacement.
For privacy to be widespread, it must be part of a social contract. People must come and together deploy these systems for the common good. Privacy only extends so far as the cooperation of one's fellows in society. We, the cypherpunks, seek your questions and your concerns and hope we may engage you so that we do not deceive ourselves. We will not, however, be moved out of our course because some may disagree with our goals.
Though personal privacy is a personal choice, for the conditions to exist where the choice is a meaningful one, encryption systems need to be adopted widely. That's why this ultimately is a collective effort.
The cypherpunks are actively engaged in making the network safe for privacy. Let us proceed together apace. Onward.
The manifesto closes with an invitation to discuss freely and work together, without wavering in their commitment to the goals of the movement. This is really very appropriate for an anarchy that is set on nothing short but the public's liberation by guaranteeing open, free, and private deliberation.